Hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to Water Moon Cards. This is your host, Luna, and today I have a multi-layered video for you. It's a spread idea that I got from another tarot tuber. It's a check-in with my card of the year. It's a think piece on some of Paula Houston's definitions that I learned when I did my Drop 'em 78 Tarot Challenge earlier this year. Before we get started, I will say that I originally drew this spread with a different deck than the one that I'm showing. I used this one, and I've seen other folks talking about it on YouTube. There is a concern that there's quite a bit of AI use to produce this deck, and it's not one that I bought for myself. I did receive it as a gift. While I feel uncomfortable about the AI aspect of it, I'm not going to get rid of it, but I'm also not going to feature it on the channel. The artist does have a website, and you can look them up and do your own research, or maybe have a conversation with them. I'd love to know more if you know more, but my understanding is that the artist behind this spent about 6 months developing this deck, and given the level of detail in the cards and the artwork, I don't think you could hand draw 78 cards to this level of detail in 6 months. And they did say that they used AI to sort of clean up or enhance their own artwork, but I don't know where the line is there. I don't know really what they mean by that, or where. I'm not even sure what my own comfort level is with that. And so for those reasons, I'm not going to show you the cards from this deck. And I guess the reason I'm bringing it up at all is because I do want to know more about how this deck was made. So if you find out or you know anything, please let me know in the comments. So for those of you playing at home, you might already know this, but I'm not going to assume that you watched my personal card of the year video for 2026. I like to draw a card of the year. I do not select one based on my birth date, nor do I pick one out intentionally. I think any method for choosing a card of the year is valid, and you can do whatever you want. I like to shuffle the majors and have a predictive reading based on whatever card I draw. So I got the Tower this year, and as part of that reading, I also got the Page of Swords, and it was sort of like, what can I, how am I going to deal with this Tower here was somewhat part of that question. And I read this as attack it, chop it down with your sword. Do it intentionally and do it consistently. That was great. That was empowering. I liked it. Admittedly, in past years, I haven't really done anything else with my card of the year reading other than refer back to it and remind myself what it is, and maybe reflect on situations, circumstances, developments throughout the year that might relate to that, and kind of keep it as a point of reference and inspiration through the year, which has been fine. But I haven't really done any follow-up readings or anything like that with it. And then I saw Nancy over at Hidden Magic Tarot do a whole series on her card of the year and how she develops spreads for monthly check-in readings with the card of the year, weekly check-in readings with the card of the year, and daily check-in readings with the card of the year. And I will link her videos below so you can check them out. They're amazing, and they've been so inspirational. And so I am heavy lifting from her. Thank you, Nancy, for both explaining your methodology and also sharing your spreads. I really, really do appreciate it, and I've benefited in many ways. And so I want to show you guys what I did for May. Like I said, what she does, and she explains this better in a video, is she develops a type of spread per card. So she has this kind of, what tower do I need to tear down this month? Or how do I relate to my tower card this month? She also has an unrelated spread that she recently shared called Bridging the Gap. And it's about, how do I get from point A to point B? And so I thought, ooh, what if you combined those two ideas? And so that's what I did for my May monthly reading. I always do a reading for myself at the beginning of the month. Like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to do with my card of the year. It just has to do with whatever I feel like asking that particular day. But this month in May, I decided to ask about my card of the year. So the first card I drew, the first position of this, is, what tower do I need to tear down this month? And I got the 10 of Wands. This is Pablo Robledo's Besançon deck, and I'm just mentioning that because This deck is also a Besançon, so it has Juno and Jupiter in it instead of the High Priestess and Hierophant or Papess and Pope. And that is important because the next card that I got was Where Am I Starting? And I got Juno. So I need to tell you about Juno. And then where can I end up? And then how do I bridge the gap? And so this is the part of, the second part of my inspiration from Nancy is, okay, what am I tearing down? Where am I starting? And where can I get to by the end of the month? And so that bridging the gap is to pull cards that tell you a roadmap, essentially, to get from point A to point B. And so in my roadmap, I got the Valet of Coins, the Page of Coins, the Five of Wands, so another Wands card, and then the Six of Cups. Now, Juno in Roman mythology is related to marriage. She's the goddess of marriage, and she's also the goddess of kind of the state. She's like an official goddess of Rome. I didn't necessarily want to interpret this as marriage, even though I am married, because then it's like, okay, I'm starting in my marriage, and then when I'm going to leave and strike out on my own, that doesn't make any sense. Don't worry, honey, if you're watching this. So I had to like figure out what, some more subtle or interesting ways of looking at Juno would be. So I looked her up. She is the daughter of Saturn and a goddess I'd never heard of called Ops, O-P-S. And Saturn is the god of time. He's the god of, he has to do with sort of stability and rigidity, responsibility, etc., etc. Then you have Ops, who is the agricultural goddess. So she's the goddess of fertility and crops and so forth. So if you take sort of productivity, Ops, and Saturn, rigidity, and time passing, so rigidity over time, to me you get something like playing by the rules, being a good girl, being responsible and doing what you're told, and having learned this over time. So you learn this, so this is like an internalized state of being that I've learned over time, right? What is successful? Being productive is good. Focusing on the status quo is good and creates good results, etc., etc. And then over here we have the Valet de Baton, or the Page of Wands, or batons, clubs, whatever you want to call them. And so here again, I needed a little bit more information. So I looked at Hewson's definitions from the Dame Fortune's Wheel Tarot. And one of the keywords that Hewson gives for this card is prowess, so ability. But another one is marvelousness, or something extraordinary, or an extraordinary person. And so in terms of a destination, I had to sit and think about that for a minute, but I kind of landed on like something beyond your imagination, something you could never have expected, right? So if you get out of this like learned rigidity, conservative mindset, thinking about being a good girl, being productive, valuing yourself based on your productivity, etc. If you can break away from that, change that up somehow, then it can open up a whole new world of possibility that you don't even know what's coming. You're not even sure what that is. But it can be curiosity and interest, and potentially bring an unexpected surprise. It also, of course, sounds a little scary because, there's surprises and then there's surprises. But I have been working on being less rigid. So the tower that we're tearing down this month is the Ten of Wands. And I don't typically enjoy or use the idea of being overburdened, as is sort of indicated by the Rider-Waite-Smith. Even some Marseille books, I think, have that interpretation. I like to think about this as being useful, serving your community, taking on the load so that somebody else doesn't have to. It's an act of generosity to me. If you see this card, or if you know the image of the guy with all the sticks, the load of sticks on his back, kind of humping him up a hill, an act of service. putting others before yourself. That is generally where I like to start with this card. However, I have been feeling burned out. I have been feeling overburdened. And I've also been feeling pulled in many different directions. And so if we think about the center of this card as being me or my experience, right? Being pulled over here and over there and up there and down there and this way and that way. Visually, this makes a lot of sense to me. So if I'm feeling spread too thin, then where am I right now and where can I get to? And so tying this idea of, getting from Juno to the Page of Wands is also ties back into this overburdenedness, right? These two cards are kind of a similar situation. I'm overburdened because I've just taken on too much responsibility of traditional roles, or put too many things into play at once and feel like I have to actually do them all, overcommitting myself in order to feel productive and feel good about myself, my self-esteem or my sense of self-worth or value. Somewhere down in there, I am sure, that is my motivation. And so really taking a look at that and saying, how can I just feel more free? How can I feel more excited? How can I feel more curious? How can I feel more open to possibility? Even if I don't know what those possibilities are, especially if I don't know what those possibilities are, how can I get to that mental mindset instead of, saying, okay, one more thing on my to-do list, one more thing to crank out this weekend, one more thing to fit into my schedule, one more thing to blah, 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 blah. How can I just kind of relax and let go of all that? And so, as Nancy explains in her Bridging the Gap spread, then you can draw however many cards, one more. In this case, I drew 3. How can you bridge the gap between the place that you're in around this particular tower to get to something else? So the heart of the reading, again, wanted to kind of mix it up with my interpretation. So I turned to Houston again. He's been very reliable for this reading. I think I was really struggling this day to read for myself, and I often do, but even with this reading, I was just trying to fit it into my schedule. It's like, okay, it's the first of the month. I have to do my tarot reading. Okay, now I have this really juicy question. That's great. But I laid the cards out on the table, and they didn't immediately make me think of a lot of different things. So if I'm in a place of learned productivity, I can, instead of constantly thinking of new things to do, constantly thinking of new ways to justify my existence, essentially, I can just appreciate what I have, what I've accomplished so far, where I am, and focus on what's right in front of me. So instead of having that mental to-do list all the time of nagging of like, as soon as you finish this, you're going to have to do that. And as soon as you finish that, you're going to have to do this. And are you going to have time for this in your day, or do you need to put that off to tomorrow? Like all that background chatter, let go of that, focus on one thing at a time and really pay attention and really enjoy and be in whatever you're doing. All the pages have this sense of joy and newness to them, freshness, looking at something from a different angle, or just appreciating like a new experience, right? So even if it's something that I have done before, appreciating it as if it's new, looking at the value of that thing from a different angle. And the other thing that I've been struggling with personally is craving certain things in my life. And again, instead of wanting something else, looking at what I already have and being satisfied with that, learning how to do that and checking myself. Craving again. Okay, that's fine. That's been coming up. Good. I saw it. I see you. And, then taking a moment to instead swap out another thought, maybe. The Five of Wands really stumped me, so I'm going to come back to that. The Six of Cups was interesting because I have come to appreciate this card, again, partially through what Houston writes, not so much as the traditional interpretation of nostalgia, which I find a useless term. I don't necessarily think we're all in love with our past or in love with our childhood all the time, but simpler, just the past, right? So using experience of the past, reflecting on that, and looking towards the future. So if the primary interpretation of this card is the past, then an inverse of that would be looking towards the future. And again, not planning anything, but being open. So then what does this middle card mean? I'm going to appreciate, I'm going to look towards the future. What am I doing right here? I need an action. Often with the Five of Wands, and the fives in general, I think about disruption. I think about disrupting the status quo, which can be good, clearly I need to do that in order to tear down this tower. You can do something different. What is that thing? If we think about the traditional image here from the Waite-Smith deck, I often interpreted this as uncoordinated effort. So it's like you're trying to do something, but you're not good at it yet. You don't really know what you're doing. You didn't read the instructions, or, the other people on the committee or the team aren't listening. And so you're all kind of working at cross purposes. But that interpretation doesn't really work for this because it's kind of negative. If I'm trying to think of like something productive to do to bridge my gap, then being uncoordinated and wasting my effort is not a positive action I can take, right? So again, turned to Hewson just to see what was in the book. Wasn't really expecting much. And at first I wasn't getting much because most of his keywords for this card are fairly negative. Hewson gives a very unconventional interpretation of this card. Again, I think probably from Matea. And so the primary keyword is gold and riches and inheritance, which doesn't fit my understanding of this card at all. And then his inverse meanings, or his reverse meanings, are things like bickering and not getting along. And so that would have to do, again, with our Waite-Smith image. But again, neither bickering nor gold is really helpful in this context. So what could I go for here? Well, one minor keyword that Hewson throws in there, among others, is inconstancy or inconsistency. And so if you flip that on its head and you turn that word into a positive, what is being inconsistent? It's experimenting, right? It's trying something new. It's not being stuck into this grind of, what am I supposed to be doing? What do people expect of me? What am I holding myself accountable for? What are the things that I always do? What does my mile-long to-do list say I'm supposed to be doing? What have I committed to that, is taking up more time or resources than I had bargained for? All of those things, right? Instead, snap out of it, shake it up, try something new, experiment. Fuck around and find out. Don't take it so seriously. Goof off. Let yourself play. And so play and the Six of Cups, again, also kind of go together, right? Relax, enjoy, appreciate. So suddenly these three cards start to make sense together when you look at them from that taking inconsistency on purpose and experimenting and being a little bit more free. So appreciate what's in front of you rather than always reaching for something new. Mix it up, enjoy it, have fun, be goofy, be willing to fail, right? Be willing to try something and have it fail and be like, oh, that was interesting. That's part of experimenting, is learning from things not going well, because it gives you information and it shows you something in a new light that you wouldn't have learned if you hadn't tried to do that and had it be a flop. And then, being gentle with yourself around this, but also just looking at, taking that kind of momentum and saying, okay, how can I keep doing that? How can I keep freeing myself up? And how can I support my own emotions in this process of experimenting? How can I keep it joyful and light and fun? And then if I do all those things, where will that lead me? I don't know, right? Somewhere new and interesting. May or may not be a place I want to be, but it won't be stuck here. It'll be different. And that's really all I can ask for, especially in 1 month's time. So that's what I'm going to do this month. Thank you again to Nancy, and thank you again to all of you for tuning in and letting me be a little bit vulnerable with you about my own personal readings. And like I said, go visit Nancy's channel as well. She's got a lot of great examples, sample spreads and things to kind of reinvigorate, I think, your readings and give you ideas for experimenting and playing if you feel stuck in a rut, or like you say, you use the same formula all the time. I think that could really help break things up. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.